You're tuned in to RX Radio.
This is the episode that we were going to record a few weeks ago, but we're going to hopefully actually record it now.
Yeah. We gave an honest effort, I think, as much as we ever do.
As honest as we can ever be. And in that spirit of that potential honesty, I used to start all supplementation and nutrition conversations off, especially on the podcast, with like, hey man, I don't really know a lot about this. Like, you know, we got questions a lot, especially in the early days where I think the podcast was very, very like topical in the sense of like thematic of like, hey, we're going to talk about shoulder this, knee this. And it was fairly in depth. And if those of you have been down since the jump, you probably remember, I don't know, maybe the first 75, 100 episodes were very like concise dissertations on topics. And we stayed away from nutrition. And then what I've noticed over the years is no one knows what they're talking about. And they don't ever have the disclaimer of like, hey, I don't know what I'm talking about. And they talk about nutrition. So I'm like, well, fuck, I've been eating food now for 34 years. That's probably as qualified as some of these other people are. So I thought today might be good to dive into the supplementation realm a little bit. Thoughts?
Yeah, I have a very similar perspective that you do. I talk to people about nutrition almost on a daily basis. And I always preface it with, look, this isn't my area of expertise, but I'll be honest, I probably know more than people that do this and claim it to be their area of expertise. So it's something that, yeah, I've manipulated nutrition for different reasons around body composition and performance in the gym for literally decades now, probably about 22, 24 years. Everything from wrestling, bodybuilding, like strength phases, cutting for weightlifting. So yeah, I'm well enough versed in how to use nutrition to achieve the goals that you're trying to achieve in the gym. I don't stay up to date on the latest research. I don't do much reading on it, but it's something that I think that you need to have an understanding of, because if you have performance goals, they're also nutrition goals. There's no way around that, right? There's no way you're going to perform and be able to completely neglect this stuff. There's always going to be outliers who are they're just performers, but the majority of people, this is just as important, if not more, than what you're doing in the gym is what you're doing with your nutrition. And hand in hand with that is going to be supplementation. So supplementation is going to be the thing that takes priority when there's an absence of those, whatever it might be, that stuff in your nutrition regimen. So yeah, I think supplementation becomes really important to anyone that has any sort of performance goal.
Yeah. And I think the aim for most people, like I think it's a podcast audience is the one that looks to get informed, right? It can't be as entertaining as YouTube or Instagram. It's more longer form. And I think the mile marker should be set at the very least, knowing how to, when appraising fitness content, which is like we've talked about before, is like just knowing when to be able to smell bullshit, right? Like, and I think that's something that it might be a little bit easier to ascertain, or that mile marker might be a little bit easier to reach with fitness, because the consumption of food is one essential, right? So it's like you have to eat things. And I'm sure there's some crazy wild people on Instagram that are telling you like don't eat at all, or there's remedial factions of that are intermittent fasting and sometimes like super long fasting, which I don't know, make up your own mind about that. But I think the goal in maybe this conversation is I do want to get into how you prioritize supplementation, because for me, as I've gotten older and busier, and especially as we interact and we work hand in hand and one-on-one with professional athletes, I feel like there has to be a bit of a perspective shift on supplementation. And like, to me, supplementation, given my performance goals, given my lifestyle, the intersection of those two things has become much more essential, or has become essential, where it's almost been, it's the word itself doesn't really fit how I view supplementation in my life. Like, it is not supplemental, like it is elemental. Like, supplements are a cornerstone of my life, because training and super physiological adaptations, like I'm trying to be stronger than most. I'm trying to be bigger than most. And frankly, having a day job that isn't being a professional bodybuilder, which is just sitting around, not to be disparaging against professional bodybuilders, I'm sure there is more to it than this, but like I have shit to do. Right. And when you deal with pro athletes, or if you deal with, anyone who has training as a priority in their life, it's like, there isn't enough hours in a day. And I think hopefully long are the days of people going like, well, just eat whole foods. Like, dog, I'm trying to eat people that just eat whole foods. Right. So I think like priority number one in having the conversation is first exclusion criteria, which I think is often the case in adopting certain habits around anything. Is like, is the information you're consuming, no pun intended, is it meant for you to consume, right? Because the exclusion criteria of consuming information on the internet is, do you follow this person, or are they on some sort of feed that you're scrolling in? It's not like catered or curated to you as much as Instagram might try. Instagram is always on some shit trying to get people in trouble. I don't know. What is your Explore feed consist of?
I started removing shit from my Explore feed because it's... All right, so there's like 4 things that'll come up. There's sneakers, which is sick. Like, I like sneakers. There's people lifting weights, and there's naked girls. Actually, there's only 3 things that come up.
I literally have to. I don't know how to the only way I manipulate it is if I go to the Explore page, and like the third one is Instagram must just think, oh, he's a 34-year-old male, therefore just give him soft core porn. And I'm like, I'll literally go through on like the tattoo pages and the dog pages on Explore. And I don't know how to use social media. I don't think I only end up at the Explore page when I have to search someone. Like I'm trying to send you a stupid something or other, and I have to find your profile. And I see it, and I was like, why is this what they think I want to? Like, it's so demeaning to me that Instagram has reduced me to this this chimpanzee in the corner. Like, it's absolutely, it's really insulting.
Yeah.
Zuckerberg, fuck you. So I'll deliberately go on there and just be like, tattoo thing, like the tattoo thing. And then like, I'll start to see now, okay, now it's only tattoos for like a week. Algorithm. And then I go back and it's just soft core. I'm just like, okay, what are we doing here?
Yeah, but you can hit not interested. Like, I think you hold down the thing and you hit not interested and they just go away.
You're blowing my mind right now. Dude, that is wild.
I
need that in my life. Yeah.
Also, wait, this is an important feature that you and all of our listeners need to know. If there's someone that comes up on your story at the top, you can just hold their picture down and mute them right from there.
Really? You don't got to go in and hit the thing?
No, just do it right from there.
Man, I've had a couple just straight. Like I call the herd every now and then. If I have nothing to do, and or if I'm really overwhelmed, I have some very low level tasks that I perform just so I feel like I'm doing something to better my future. Like,
I like that.
Sometimes I wake up and I'm just like, today is just not a day. And it's going to be one for sure. And I'm going to have to deal with all of it. And the first thing I do when I get out of bed is I just start unsubscribing from emails. Like, well, even if this is the only thing I do today, at least I won't get a Ticketmaster email tomorrow. Like little shit like that. And one of the habits on that short list is getting rid of people and muting them on social media.
It's so freeing. It
is. It's the murder button. It's tremendous. Now, how did this happen? How did we get here? How did we get nutrition? Supplementation. Okay. The goal should be to know where to smell bullshit. Because I did a Q&A the other day, and I didn't realize how visceral a response nutrition gets, but it does make sense, right? Like I was saying earlier, everyone has to consume food, right? Not everyone has to train, right? Especially training for particular goals. Like you and I have, I would say, more niche training goals. Like we're not just trying to get fit. If anything, we're trying to be unhealthy,
right,
as possible while still lifting a lot of weights. So it's elected. Training is elected. You're opting into this, where you don't get to opt into food. I mean, in the Western world, the luxury of this is there's more people dying of obesity and starvation. You don't get really opt into food. You get to opt into what kind of food. And therein lies a lot of the contention. And therein makes it a lot harder to differentiate kind of the bullshit or the wheat from the chaff. Like, have you gone through and just perused around at a very high level the nutrition influencer space at all?
Oh, I avoid that like the fucking plague, dude. Like it's
Oh,
so bad. And it's so
a mess.
positive. It's like the toxic positive where it's like, "Oh, you're the type of person that's always like this that I want to punch in the face."
Ah, there's one guy that comes to mind, and I don't want to make this putting him on because he's not positive at all, but
Oh.
he's fucking phenomenal. He's phenomenal in the way that like an SUV on fire facing the wrong direction on the highway is phenomenal.
So just for
And
your
like,
viewing pleasure.
oh my god, it's and like, okay, his name is Eddie underscore Abu. Have you ever seen this guy? I feel like everyone knows this guy, and I've just stumbled upon him. Like I've just discovered fire in like 1985. But it's like, have you seen this guy? Are you looking him up?
No, Eddie underscore what?
Abu, EDDIE underscore ABBEW. I
Uh,
came across this guy the other day.
Shitty carbs versus sweet potato. His first meal of the
Yes,
day.
yeah, that guy.
3 ways to boost muscle growth. Yeah.
He swears a lot. He's like old man yells at nutrition cloud, but like I don't know. I couldn't spend enough time on his page to get a take on it, but I was like, it's so there is no more polarizing sub niche within the health and fitness industry than nutrition information, hands down, bar none, not even close.
Yeah.
Right? Low intensity steady state versus high intensity interval training, strength versus endurance. The Red Sox versus the Yankees. Nothing is as contentious as food.
Yeah. People have a
And
very emotional attachment to the food that they eat, the way that they eat, and the habits that they have around it.
and part of that kind of leads into the supplementation conversation, because where I've been spending more of my attention just on the performance side of things is really looking at the underlying effects of supplementation for neurotransmitters. Because when you understand a little bit about addiction, right, which is that if anyone grew up in like
Shout
there's a
out to my
weird,
sponsors.
how many of those have you had?
Not enough.
Yo, it's a fucking president of Zimbabwe over here. I can't do it, dog. I can't do nicotine.
Don't. Just don't.
PSA, PSA, kids.
Yeah.
Stay in school. Don't do nicotine.
It's the same advice I give vegans. Like, don't eat meat because then there's more for me.
Yeah, we don't need a Zyn shortage. You know what? I think I might just start smoking cigarettes. Like, at this
Like
point,
a fucking man. Like a fucking man.
yo, you have to admit, like, I don't. My fault. Did your parents smoke?
My mom did. I think before I was born, she quit though.
Yeah, same. Both of my parents did. Apparently, my dad was a pretty heavy smoker up until my sister's 37, so up until 37 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And like, it's funny because the Marlboro Man propaganda still works. I'm like, yo, Dad. Like, I don't ever say this to him. I don't care that I mean, I don't care if I did, but like, I picture my dad smoking, and it does make him cooler. like, sorry, like it does. The thing is now, it's like the Zyn pouch is like, for those of you who have followed the evolution of nicotines and young adults, it used to be, this is a evolution of just throwing in a lipper, which some of you might be familiar. Perhaps you're in a part of the world where people don't have many teeth. They're walking around with a
Dallas,
Gatorade
Pennsylvania.
bottle, but like the Gatorade bottle only has this much in it at all times.
Yeah.
I watched a guy, oh my God, when I played junior hockey, I watched a kid. We had this kid from the States, and he was our supplier. Because you guys did you ever do chewing tobacco?
Yeah.
Like, okay, so pre-pouch days,
Yeah.
you would buy like the loose leaf stuff, and you would you sit there and pack a tin, and you just fucking. I could never do it. I fucking never in my life. Did you?
Fucking gross. Yeah, I did it for a while. Like wrestling.
How old
and,
are you?
I'm 87.
No, I meant like how old were you when you were doing it?
Oh.
I picture 12-year-old Jiunta just packing a tin in glass.
No, probably like 18 through like 22, like through wrestling and like manual labor days, like that was the thing.
That is such a wild. So where I played hockey, I played right on the border of Canada and the U.S. And there's this one dude. We had an American player that played on our team, and you guys, it's cheap over there compared to Canada.
Oh yeah, it used to be like $2 and change for a tin.
It was probably $12 to $15 a tin in Canada.
Yeah.
So this kid would leave hockey practice. Ryan Neller would leave practice with, I don't know, $1,000 in cash. And he would jump the border, go to the duty free, come back the next day for practice or game or whatever. And he'd literally have 2 bags. He'd have like a hockey bag with his equipment, and he had a bag full of fucking shoe. But it's, it's evolved now to the pouch, which I see the evolution, and it's like, okay, I understand the utility of it. It's much neater. It's, for the professional nicotine addict in your life, try Zyn. Keep that. That one's free, guys. You guys can use that tagline. But it's like and this is a bit of an aside, as this whole episode seems to be, but there's something to be said about chewable adult vitamins that I really can't get on board with. Because I was raised on tough pills to swallow, both figuratively and metaphorically.
Right.
And there's something so poetic about the sign of the times we're in, that there's no more tough pills to swallow. You can just chew your Flintstone adult gummies. What are you going to do? Finger painting after this, you fucks? Can you do something hard in your life, please? I remember I was struck with a decision to make when I was, I don't know, 15, 16. Be a bitch or get over, at the very least, your fear of taking pills. Give me the animal pack. Dude, I could do 2 animal packs in one hand like a fucking pelican.
Yeah.
Just down the hatch. What are my options? Be a small little bitch or take 35 pills the size of an eraser? Give me the fucking erasers down the hatch.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I remember once I took BCAA pills when I trained in the morning, and I would,
the ON ones.
Yeah, but they released not in your stomach. They were time release in your throat. I don't know what was holding these fucking things together. They were held together with rice paper or something. They were little. And I remember going to say hi. I was walking through res in undergrad, and I don't know, I was barely awake, and I threw back, I don't know, 30 of them, because why not? I would just drink them. I was like, okay, more is probably better. And I went to say hi to someone in res. It was 5 a.m. I was walking to the gym, and the only thing that came out was a giant cloud of powder.
That's fucking amazing.
Oh my God, it was insane. But yeah, now as I've evolved, to get back to your point about all right, nutrition is so behaviorally driven, right? And when you dig to the root of a lot of behaviors, especially when you start to dig to addiction, which is how we got here, you're talking about your potential, very real, potentially problematic addiction with nicotine.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's I think of people who have serious drug issues, you're not selling your furniture. You're not selling your furniture to buy Zyn.
Not yet. No, things are going well enough that I don't have to.
Things are going well. There's a good intersection of control and the price of Zyn, which makes it
it's like cocaine on Wall Street.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there lies my point, right? When you look at people's issues, or maybe not their issues, but their emotional attachments to food, and you start to understand a little bit about what drives that attachment is widely considered to be neurotransmitter mediated, right? So when you start to look at dopamine and serotonin, it's the same thing that drives all our behavior, right? Look at social media, for example. Everyone sort of probably either directly through or indirectly through some sort of documentary or hearing it from a friend. We know the implications roughly on social media, the positive feedback loops, reward centers in our brain, and that link to serotonin, right? Or serotonin, dopamine. And then you talk a little bit more about excitatory and inhibitory neurotransmitters. GABA is one that is talked about a lot. And so you start to realize that, look, we're just kind of puppets, right? Without going too far into do you have free will or not? you're kind of at the mercy of your neurotransmitters, your hormones, and the interaction between the two. So when I look at supplementation, at least for me, there are things that I can do that can drive my behaviors with supplementation, right? So there are things that I can do to increase or decrease my appetite. For example, if I was trying to lose weight, to which I am not right now, I would go down something like the nicotine. Right, this is turning into a Zyn commercial. Right, but it's like there are ways that you can start to manipulate that with supplementation that I find to be ridiculously effective.
Yeah.
Right, and for me, it's like you can supplement not necessarily directly towards, I'm going to take this and this is going to happen. It's just when you start to understand how behaviors, and I hate to use the word stack on top of each other because it's sort of like an atomic habits verbiage. But you can start to be like, I can play 3 moves back on the chessboard. I can take some very basic supplements and I can start to make some very easy downstream effects. Like for me, sleep has always been an issue, at least quantity of sleep. Quality kind of comes in fluctuations. So I'll just supplement around improving that. And then all of a sudden my quality of sleep improves and I put on 10 pounds. It's the only thing that I do. I don't get weight gainer. And then this is where I think a lot of people look at, and because we've done that, and I know you're laughing because you're thinking of the ON fucking garden spade that you spent one
sandcastle scooper.
Just comes with like a little bucket.
Yeah.
So, but it's like and I think supplements should be in a similar way that we look at training. It's like, there are conversations had about the direct effects of like mechanical tension on a muscle, but like there's so much to be benefited from like the net effect of stabilizing a particular joint, right? This is what we talk about all the time. And I think I find myself looking at supplementation in a very similar way of like, okay, I'm not trying to press my nose up to the glass and solve a problem directly. Like, yes, I'm at a point in my training where I want to gain more weight. However, there's probably a more efficient use to there's ways that I can supplement more effectively that outside of just pushing my calories higher to actually start to recover and gain like meaningful body mass, right? And not just be like a giant blown up piece of shit. So for me, when I look at supplementation, I feel like I look at it in a very similar way to training, where it's not just like this. It's not like topping up a gas tank, which I think is like, I think that was a Phil Smith-ism or potentially Dwayne, was like, oh, you're low in this, therefore you have to take this. It's like the cascades that really drive a lot of these processes are a little bit more complicated, right? So for you, what have been some mainstays on the supplementation side for you?
Yeah. I'll give a little bit more elaborate answer than just giving the things that I take. I think I like that point that you made about, there being all these variables that compile to make the supplement or maybe the actions that you're taking, the behaviors that you already have more effective. And that to me is something that like Dwayne's really drilled home with his nutrition and his gut health courses, is that if you're not digesting things properly, it doesn't matter if you're taking a ton of fucking weight gainer powder, you're probably still not going to get to the goal as efficiently or as effectively as you possibly could, unless you're maximizing gut health. So I take that sort of approach as well. And for me, it's about being efficient. I want to be efficient in what I'm doing. I don't want to do things just because, like, yes, the weight gainer says it's going to make me gain weight, so that's going to be the way that I gain weight. So, and this kind of fits, and this isn't even like an intentional plug or like because they sponsor us, but like we have a partnership with Marek Labs. I think getting blood labs done is the most effective way that you could learn what you need to be doing in terms of supplementation, and then weighing that against the snapshot of the habits that you currently have, right? Your diet, your nutrition, your training, your sleep, your stress management, that's all going to be reflected in those blood labs as a snapshot of biologically what's going on as an effect of all of these things. So that can be a really good way to inform the way that you approach supplementation. So for me, I got labs done not too long ago, probably a few months ago, and I've been taking 5,000 IUs of vitamin D every single day for probably 2 to 3 years now. And on those labs, I found out my blood labs were low. So like the recommendation, or my vitamin D levels were low. So the recommendation was like take 15,000 IUs of vitamin D, which I never thought, like that sounds excessive to me, even just saying it right now. But like vitamin D is pretty fucking important. It's involved in a ton of pathways in your body. People say that it's like, they compare it to a hormone in the way that it acts in the body. I don't really know all the pathways and all that stuff, and so I won't speak to it. But I can say that since I've been taking 15,000 IUs of vitamin D with K2 because it helps it absorb, I've had a lot more mental clarity and I feel a lot better going about my day just from like one change like that. So in terms of supplementation, that's something that's been a mainstay for me. Vitamin D, K2, along the lines of what you were saying, like sleep. I've always prioritized sleep just because it's something that it's your number one tool for recovery. And if you're trying to train hard, if you're trying to perform in the gym, maximizing sleep is something that's very important. So, and this is actually one that Mac gave to me. I've taken zinc and magnesium in different capacities for a lot of my training career. Like ZMA was the thing when I was in like high school, college. It's just like the shit you take. Yeah, the shit you take. Like if you don't want to take steroids, like this will make your testosterone higher. Anyways, so I'll take magnesium before bed. I'll split it with my zinc because apparently there's some sort of, I don't know. Have Mac explain it to you. But I'll take zinc in the mornings. So there are two that have been a mainstay for me. And then outside of that, the things that I supplement are nutritional. Like I like what you said earlier about like at a certain point, there's a bell curve, right? Where okay, if you want to be healthy, get the blood labs done, supplement according to what's going to put you within the normal values for what's found on your blood labs. But there's also this other kind of tail end of the bell curve that I try really fucking hard to keep up with, in being an outlier in terms of performance, right? Once you get to a certain point, it's not necessarily about maximizing your health, it's about maximizing your performance. And for me, that a lot of times comes down to caloric intake. It's really hard for me to eat enough calories to maintain the muscle mass that I need to have to perform the way I want to perform. So protein supplements have always, always, always been a mainstay for me. And I'd say this probably has to be one of the most prevalent supplements that people use on a regular basis. I probably supplement with 50 grams of whey protein per day. And that's like on a day that my eating is good. It might be like 90 on a day where I've fallen behind or I'm busy or I don't have access to all the meals that I would normally like to have. So protein supplements are fucking huge for me, and creatine as well. I'll take 5 grams of creatine every single day, and that's pretty much what I take. I'll take some of like the stuff on the nootropic side. I like alpha GPC a lot when I have to like be mentally sharp. I feel a difference with that. Obviously, I supplement with nicotine as well. Caffeine, always a gram a day. Highly recommend it. Not medical advice.
No, not actually though. No, you don't. But
and yeah, I should probably be supplementing with something to control my blood pressure at this point.
do you measure blood pressure?
What's that?
I'm sure your blood pressure is in healthy range.
Ooh, that's a bold statement.
Really? You're so, I don't know. The thing is, mine always is, which surprises the fuck out of me every single time.
All right, I'll get my blood pressure measured, and we'll talk about this on the next podcast.
So curious. Yeah. I mean, I like the way that like you brought up some interesting points. Like the DK2 one, I think is true of a phenomenon that I think is kind of digging to the heart of my point about supplementation. It's just like it's more than just topping up, right? Like, but it's more effective if you take K2 with vitamin D. Right. Those relationships, right? Those synergetic relationships are everywhere in nutrition, right? Like you can have like magnesium supplementation is pretty much a staple. I think, I'd be hard pressed to think of someone reputable in the health and fitness space, leaning more towards the conventional medicine side that wouldn't be promoting magnesium use.
Mm-hmm.
But calcium and magnesium are ones where like you can get like false readings of like your body, because these micronutrients, minerals are so important, they will make themselves available by other means. Right. So like this is where, you brought up Marek, and, if you guys haven't, definitely get your blood labs done. I think it's marekhealth.com/rxradio. We'll put all that in the show notes. And it's like, if you don't get a full snapshot, you might think that my magnesium is fine. It's like, well, your body might be making it fine because you need it. Like there are processes, like I think of a comparison of like, the process of gluconeogenesis. It's like there is a lot of conversation around carbohydrates in the weight training space. And I think a lot of them, to be honest, is pretty overrated. Because when you do research on carbohydrates and muscular endurance, they're doing actual endurance things. And then people just take like these, weight training sports scientists will take these principles and be like, see, you need this for like 8 by 10, even 20 reps is not endurance. And your body, thank God, has a process by which it replenishes muscle glycogen without the presence of carbohydrates. Like that's a process it's gluconeogenesis is the process by which these things are created by the breakdown of other things. Now, mind you, you might not want the breakdown of other things, but sometimes you might want the breakdown of the other things, say fat, for example, right? So I think the carbohydrate conversation is one of the leading, if I had to subcategorize my prioritization or a potential list of priorities when it comes to maximizing, because you talked about maximizing performance versus health. I would say people are looking to optimize their health, and I would say we are looking to maximize performance. And there is a distinct difference in the cost benefit ratios that you weigh out in your head and the decisions that you make between the two. Right? Mm-hmm. I am not here for a long time, friends. I am here for a big time. That's what I want to be here for. So it's like, are you optimizing for health or are you maximizing performance? Because I think those two things are different. You want to push, like you said, far down the right of that tailwind of that bell curve. So when you start to look at like, all right, well, what are the things that are really going to maximize? Like, there's only so much. Like I'll talk maybe a little bit about my supplement thought process and get into where I think the big subcategories are for me. And the first one is vitamin C, which in the same way that K2 and vitamin D are important, vitamin C helps with the formation of collagen. So if you're consuming a tremendous amount of protein, which I'm bare minimum 300 grams a day, which is like, it's a lot. Now, you said you might supplement with 50. I will every day supplement with 100.
Yeah.
Now, there's some sub conversations to protein that I think is important because like you talked about with Dwayne, and I love the way that Dwayne and Phil discuss digestion and absorption, because I think there's a difference, and I found myself guilty of this a few times. There's a difference between being easy on your stomach and being good for your stomach, right? Being easy on digestion and being good for digestion. And I think a lot of people get those conflated, right? So I've been playing with beef protein supplements outside of conventional whey, but I don't necessarily think it's, to eliminate dairy from your diet is probably not, if you are intolerant to it. Now, obviously there can be a point of pathology where you are lactose intolerant, but if you're someone like, I look at it in a way similar to how I would look at gluten. It's like if you are someone who's just electing to do that, you might be signing yourself up for a very, very sensitive problem, right? If you remove this entirely and you actively seek out alternate means, and then your body gets exposed to this, you're going to be in a bad way. So like, I do better off beef protein because it's not dairy, right? It's not a dairy byproduct. However, that is more of a me problem with digestion than a digestibility problem with whey protein. And I think that's something where, as I do recommend people where they can find good sources of beef protein to maybe try it in the interim of putting out some sort of fire, but reintroducing whey after you've sort of sorted that, I think is super useful. So for me, to kind of bring it back to the initial talking point, I take vitamin C, I think about a gram a day.
Okay.
because it's assistance in collagen formation, and obviously that collagen is going to come by way of protein. So in a similar sort of synergistic relationship that K2 and D come together, protein and vitamin C are not often, if ever, going to be seen in the same product. Hopefully we'll be able to change that here in a few months. Spoiler alert. But to me, it's imperative that those two things run together, just for the sheer amount of protein that I have to eat, right? I don't want to have to eat more, to be honest, right? I want to begin to maximize what I have to take rather than just pushing the needle to 320, 400, which has actually been shown to be net beneficial if we're talking about maximizing, especially body composition. So I'm not averse to that. It's just difficult. And that's why I take a third of my protein, at most a third of my protein every day by way of supplement, because I'm fucking busy. And this is where supplements become elemental. They're not supplemental, is because I don't have time to cook another pound of bison, right? I'm already cooking a few as it is, and I have shit to do in between. So 2 meals a day is going to be 50 grams of whey protein per meal. The next thing that I've been taking, and this is honestly, this is something that I've been paying attention to coming off my powerlifting career, and you can infer from that where you will. The neuro side of things is really important to me. Our job is to use our brains, believe it or not, which is kind of terrifying. Which, man, when people said, hey, as he throws in a lipper, it's like, I got my brain right here. But my brain exists in front of my lower teeth.
Yes.
So if anyone has taken performance-enhancing drugs and is up on the research, now, again, maybe I will throw a disclaimer because we do know people who are much more well-versed in this than we are. There is some pretty crazy evidence of the neurodegenerative effects of performance-enhancing drugs. And you see this in real time by the stupid decisions people make on these drugs. Yeah. Like, certainly your brain is wrong. Your brain is just wrong. And you can see there, Jared Feather, who's going to be on the show, works for Renaissance Periodization. Him and Mike Israetel did a podcast episode, and they discussed sort of this side of performance enhancement. And it's something that it's funny because it's not just the neurotransmitters that directly affect cognition. The one specifically that I concern myself with a decent amount, because I don't have a lot of variability in my food, and it's I guess you call it a trace mineral. Choline is something that it's weird. My parents used Benadryl as a sleep agent, yeah. Right? And then I think, so there's an entire list of anticholinergic drugs. So anticholinergic drugs are obviously they inhibit choline, and they're way more than you think. And they're probably I think allergies, like antihistamines, are anticholinergic. If you take Dramamine or motion sickness pills, if you take, what else is on there? Like SSRIs, benzodiazepines, fucking hard drug. People don't really focus on them because they're more serotonin specific, but these are all anticholinergic. And choline is something that you almost consume. Your liver makes a little bit of it, but it's almost consumed directly from food, or your entirety of the choline in your body comes from food. And that's been one where on the cognitive side, because I grew up in a household that didn't pay attention to choline and acetylcholine and pathways like that. It's I've noticed a big difference in supplementing with that, because it's not something your body can make, right? So there's a whole list of I think it's tyrosine and phenylalanine are precursors to dopamine. So those are two as well that, coming out of a competitive strength sports background for many years, and knowing a lot of the research, especially around certain compounds and their effects on dopamine. There's a drug in the bodybuilding space that is taken very frequently that is absolutely insane and no one should ever take. It's almost like the Voldemort of drugs, he who shall not be named. That's you're in a bad place when the thing you have to take to combat the effects, to quote Broderick Chavez, not side effects, are dopamine agonists. When people take tren, the thing they take to stop the tren from doing all the bad tren things is a dopamine agonist, where it's hold on, at no point, someone stops and goes, wait a minute, hold on. All the other ones are just testosterone, estrogen. This one is dopamine. And then you start to see like, oh, well, maybe if your dopamine is down, maybe that's going to make you like a little bit of like a sad panda. Maybe you get a little bit angry. And it's like, yeah, then you might want to try and offset some of the damage, or just like maybe don't take it. So someone fact check me on that. I've been pretty sure, two of the precursors of dopamine are phenylalanine and tyrosine. I think B12 is also in there, also copper. But here's something that it's not like it's a clear picture, right? It's not like it's a direct straight line. It takes a little bit of inquisition to, I think, supplement effectively for your lifestyle and your goals. And so those for me, there's a neurodegenerative side of my like supplementation. Creatine is one that's been a staple. Somewhere in the ballpark, 5-10 grams. We actually have coming up on the podcast in a couple of weeks, Scott Forbes, who's a PhD, who's focused his entire PhD research on creatine supplementation. And look, there's also the conversation of, I take choline for the neurological benefits of it and potentially offsetting some of the terrible decisions I've made in my life. At least the physiologically manifested terrible decisions I've made in my life. But not to say choline doesn't have, like magnesium, for example, has like 400 processes in the body. Some people might take it for sleep. Some people might take it for cognition. Some people might take it for digestion, whatever. But it's like you're still getting whatever you're taking it for. It's not like your body goes, oh, he's only taking it for this. Therefore, it's only gonna act this way, right? So for me, the big ones: protein, vitamin C, choline, vitamin D. I think that's it. Magnesium. And then you get into the conversation of like sourcing. And this is always tricky because this is where I think your homework has to be done. Because sourcing and dosing, I think, are the two most overlooked. Like your vitamin D thing, I think, is a really classic example, right? Here you're taking 5,000 IUs and you feel like, yeah, I feel good. You 3x it and all of a sudden you're like, I get it now, right? Like the unfortunate part is like if you look up products like Athletic Greens is one that comes to mind. It's, to quote Kyle Rogers yet again this week, it makes sense if you don't think about it, right? So Athletic Greens, people don't eat their vegetables. We've been told since the beginning of time, eat your vegetables. And if you look at the contents of Athletic Greens, and it's not like there's anything bad in it, but there are so many trace elements of things that in order to have that are far below a daily recommended intake, and daily recommended intakes are usually super, super low, right? So you have Athletic Greens coming in. I'm going to see if I can find some of the statistics about like how they just put stuff in there just to bolster the label. Like, oh, this has, niacin, or this has folate, or this has, insert whatever. Now, one, you need to ask yourself, are they sourcing these things properly? Right? Like iron. Iron is a really common one. When I was younger, I was diagnosed with anemia. I don't know what was wrong. I was in hospital for a week. I almost died. It was a whole thing. And I remember taking like ferrous sulfate. And dude, I was like, well, I went from dying of not having a red blood cell in my body to just dying from taking these supplements because my entire stomach just turned to a cinder block. I was like, oh, maybe you should take ferrous sulfate instead. I'm like, the night and day difference of taking ferrous, whatever the fuck I took, ferrous, I literally just said it. Wow, the memory is really going on me. Ferrous sulfate versus ferrous gluconate or whatever it was night and day. And I was like, oh, this is just the same thing, but different, right? Like like everyone's on methylated B vitamins now, but there's still people who just put like B12, right? Cyclocobalamin or whatever it is like a way to source it. But there's like methylcobalamin, which is like the one that's actually going to absorb. So not only are companies putting things in just to say they're there, they're also putting in the shitty versions of it. So I'm going to take a little bit more into this to see if I can find the actual one. Because what bothers me is some of the most influential people in the health and fitness space are sponsored by they've reached out to me the other day. I literally pull up an email. I don't even know if I'm allowed to do this. I didn't sign an NDA. Fuck it. I'll do it. And it was like very irking to me because I don't know a ton about nutrition. I just know what I need to do and what works for me and a little bit of the biochemistry behind why I take works or why would I take works? And I look into this product and I was like, this is so disheartening that people who are out there being, forward thinking about health and stuff and proclaim to be, health forward podcasts are just shilling this crap that has it is. I'll find the list, but yeah. So I would say so those are my big things I supplement for. One, obviously muscle mass. That's my priority. Two, I really look at cognition for me in like the long-term play because I've done so many dumb things to fuck up my head where it's like, the short-term cognitive stuff. I'm just like, look, I'll learn more over time and I'll get smart that way. Like I can't do nicotine. It makes me fucking, I got off the Adderall train, which is like, don't do meth kids. But yeah, anyway, so that's sort of like my take on supplementation on the whole is like it starts with exclusion criteria, but you can't dig into it, right? So many people are just a $10 training program and they go down to their local CVS and they get their vitamins. It's like, what do you expect?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Bioavailability is pretty important when it comes to this shit because you could be just literally dumping out your money and efforts for something that's completely not effective or not doing the thing that you're taking it to do. So that's definitely something to look into. And admittedly, for me, that's something it's so far out of my area of expertise. So I just ask people that know. But I think another important thing to realize with supplementation, something that I've noticed in the past, is that it's very subtle in the way that these things affect you on a day-to-day basis. So it really is like the long-term culmination of being able to allow your body to go through these biological processes on a continual basis. And basically, in like a less dumb way to say that, what I'm trying to say is that the positive effects are pretty subtle, but over time, if there's an absence of these things, the negative effects become very prominent, like the lack of mental clarity, like brain fog, or your inability to recover after workouts, or manifesting in poor sleep quality, poor sleep quantity, like you said earlier. So I think those are things that once you start to have the symptoms, it's because you've been in absence of whatever it might be that's disrupting that process for a long enough period of time that it's starting to manifest in something like that. So supplementation is one of those things that it's going to be a lot of little changes, but those little changes add up over a year of, I don't know, poor quality sleep versus a year of good quality sleep. You're going to be in a completely different place with those two trajectories. So that's why it comes back to me being able to be accurate and efficient with this process. I think is probably the most important. And we're at a place where blood labs are very, very accessible. Like even if you don't do it through, Marek, I don't necessarily love the idea of, especially with nutrition, financial incentivization, because I think that's when we get into those places like you're mentioning, like there's a company trying to get you to push their product and there's some sort of financial incentivization, and the person who might be pushing it might not have the background knowledge or the whereabouts or the fucks about caring if that's actually a good product. They just care about putting some money in their pocket. So doing a little bit of research or talking to someone that's not financially incentivized to be able to give you real information on what you specifically need and being as specific and as consistent with that as possible. I think that's what makes the most difference when it comes to supplementation.
Yeah, I think too many people, just like training, they look to directly correlate the outcome to something objective, where it's like, no, find a subjective proxy. So as you start to feel better, that's what starts to really move the needle. It's the same with training. It's the same bullshit we talk about with like, hey, maybe you should like do these exercises that aren't going to be the best for directly targeting a particular tissue, but it's going to be the best thing to help, keep your shoulders healthy long term. Right.
Yes.
It's not the best lat exercise, but pull-ups are a great shoulder exercise. Right. Squats might not be the best leg exercise, but it's a good lower extremity exercise, or however you want to word it. Right. Where it's like, why are you doing it? Like I'm supplementing so that I can sleep better, so that my protein digests more, so that am tired at the end of the day. In some cases, like supplement for a feeling or a habit, don't supplement for something objective, because if those habits become easier, like if I'm not mistaken, one of the benefits or one of the biggest drivers to food cravings is magnesium. It's like low magnesium. So it's like, well, don't supplement necessarily for, I'm going to take magnesium and I'm going to lose weight. It's like, no, see if there's a subjective difference in how you feel around the craving of food when you take magnesium. And then you will lose weight if you no longer have those cravings, if that is an underlying cause. Right. So it's wrapping your head around like, all right, what is the thing that I'm looking to get out of this? Like, what is the positive response? And look, sometimes some people don't have enough control in their variables to really understand why they feel the way they feel. Right. And that's tough. And that should be maybe be a part of this process as well. Like when I didn't sleep a lot, I was very inefficient and had a hard time maintaining the body composition that I would like. And it was only until I had the realization of like, I'm eating more because I'm tired. And my brain goes, well, you need awake energy and you're not getting the energy you get from being asleep because you're never asleep. So we're just going to lean into the thing that'll give us energy while we're awake. So I would like wake up and like, fuck, dude, I am starving. It's like, well, it's because you didn't really sleep, asshole. Like you kind of took a 4-hour nap. And it's like, well, give me something. And then it's like that whole process kicks off. So I think that's a really good way to help conceptualize. Because I do think if people have, if you have training goals and a job, like it probably should be, and obviously it's a luxury, and I think that should go without saying, to have the disposable income to eat food and be able to buy these. But it's like, hey, maybe go have these supplements go a little bit further. The number of people I know that pay $125 for athletic greens is like, for what? Like it's a bad multivitamin in powder form for $125. I'd rather you chew Flintstone vitamins. You might actually get more out of it. So it's like, if you are looking to maybe optimize your budget but maximize the results, take a little bit of a deeper thought process into it. And I'm definitely not saying, at least for me, is like, don't necessarily take the things I'm taking unless you have the exact same biochemistry and potential issues that I might have. But the bigger picture of like, understand what the issues can be. What are the things that you can supplement for, with the mile marker being subjective? Have it go by feel and habits, and then watch as the objective markers that you're really chasing start to improve. Because there is I don't necessarily think health and high performance, and this is like it's a somewhat contentious boomer way to look at it, because people are like, oh, if you chase health, and I think and I don't want to go too much at Sal for Mind Pump, but I think I've heard Sal say this, like, if you look at health, your aesthetics will follow. And it's like, okay, aesthetics to a certain point, performance, definitely not. Sorry.
Yeah.
Like I know some really great performance. It depends on the task. What do you perform?
Right. I agree. And I think that specific goals that people have around fitness, we'll say, whether it's body weight on the scale, whether it's aesthetics, whether it's actual performance in terms of like strength training or sport, it's so multifactorial that none of these one things is going to make the difference, but all of these things together is what's going to make the difference. So it really is the compilation of everything that you're doing. In terms of like, habits is a good word for it, but what do you do from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed? That's going to end also from the moment you go to bed to the moment you wake up. That's going to be the culmination of all those decisions that you make. It's going to be reflected in these objective outcomes. So there's so many different ways that you can tap into this. And the more specific, the more efficient you could be with these processes, because it can be a fucking lot. It's a lot. Like, we work with bodybuilders and we work with professional athletes, and a lot goes into getting them to perform the way that they need to perform so they can do the thing that they need to do. And I understand that not everyone is as invested or has the ability to be as invested in that, but still, the point that I'm trying to make here is that those people, it is every single decision that they make throughout the day is very, very minor. The more decisions there are around performance, the less they matter. The less there are, the more they matter. So understanding the things that are going to make the biggest difference and starting there, organizing your supplementation around that, your nutrition, your habits around that, is going to make the biggest difference. And that's going to get you closer to those objective goals. But you have to understand that the more that these compile, the less that each individual one is going to push the needle.
Right. Yeah. Love it. Shout out Marek Health, marekhealth.com. Yeah. Go there, get your blood labs done, figure your shit out. If you don't know what the fuck you're doing call Dwayne Jackson, Talk to James McIntosh.
Yeah. Don't call me because I'll just tell you to use nicotine and caffeine.
Yeah. It's just the answer to life's problems. All right. Well, hey guys, appreciate your time always. We'll see you guys in the episode next week.
Thanks, guys.